This is Kickin' and Streamin' Podcast.
So today we are reviewing a docuseries directed by the fantastic Ethan Hawke. And I don't know what led me to say, let's go ahead and watch this. But and by the way, Jojo, I was expecting it to be like a 2 hour thing until I actually opened it and I'm like, this is 6 hours and a half. You know? So I'm like, I guess we're gonna have to get started with this, you know.
Yeah.
So it's called The Last Movie Stars. It is the story of life together of Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward. And I have to say, I knew about Paul Newman. I didn't know a lot, but there was very little I knew about Joanne Wood. And this is, to me, one of the greatest things I've seen because it tells you that Paul Newman's greatness was owed most singularly to Joanne Woodward, and it's not a case that they make in the movie or in the docuseries. It's something that becomes evident once you start seeing it that way. And we are going to extrapolate all of that, talk about it, and see what you think, Jojo. So why don't we just start there? What did you think of this docuseries?
I think it's done in a style that I've not seen before because it was Ethan Hawke started working on it during the beginning of the pandemic and shutdown. So a lot of this is done via Zoom and Zoom meetings. And so it's sort of almost a weird, nostalgia isn't the right word, but a weird callback to the time when that first started, when we were all just sort of finding our way with Zoom meetings and that kind of thing. So there's that aspect of it is interesting because it's like, oh gosh, this really is a period in history. It really drove it home to me that this is we lived through and are continuing to live through a period of history that is affecting literally everything, including documentaries and the style in which they are done. And so I found that very interesting. It's sort of a side commentary of the times that we're living in, but also the fact that Ethan Hawke was given access to these transcripts of tapes that were made by Paul Newman, his friend and assistant in the 90s, early 90s, of many, many, many interviews with many, many, many people. And from what I understand from interviews with Ethan Hawke, they only used like a quarter of of what the material they had. Is also a style that I've not seen used before in the decision to use voice actors, since the tapes were what they did have left were unusable and the transcripts were what remained. It's just a very, very different style of documentary, but it's the story that evolves and progresses and that you are shown between these two people who were very big movie stars, each in their own right, in different times and different ways of their career, the way their relationship evolved, the way that they cared for each other, the way it changed each one of them and their careers and their person, their being. It's fascinating to get such a glimpse into a marriage. It's a rare thing, I think, to get such as close as possible as one can get to a glimpse of a marriage that isn't your own or a relationship that isn't. And that's very interesting to me. So this is, of course, it's about famous people and lots of different famous people are interviewed and talked to, but I think when it comes down to it, it's really about human beings and the love story and the enduringness of what you can get through and what you can do together if you're willing to fight for things. And I think it's a really beautiful story with a lot of maybe revelations people wouldn't know about the fans, but I think it comes down to it. It's a story of humanity and the power of love.
Yeah, the power of love is definitely a part of the story, and I am in agreement with everything you've said about this story and this documentary. As you said, it's such apropos for the time for what we've lived through, and it's older than this one. The only older movie that I know that was directed over Zoom, and I just learned about it this week, was the movie 13 Lives, which is about to come out in a few days during the month of August. So Ron Howard directed the movie over Zoom while the rest of the crew was in Thailand and stuff like that, because it was smack in the middle of the pandemic. And so I'm pretty sure that a lot more were done this way, and we just don't know about them. But it is a reminder of what we've been through and what we are going through, and how we talk about resilience in a way that is is a bit sometimes cliche, because that's the first word that comes to mind. The human being is resilient and blah blah blah, and we hardly ever talk about the power of adaptation.
Mm.
The reason why we are at the top of the evolutionary capsule is precisely because it doesn't take us long to adapt. It's not necessarily because we are the strongest. In this case, doesn't necessarily mean survival of the fittest in that context, in terms of strength, because fuck, a gorilla can kill me, a dog can kill me.
Yeah.
And a dog is not even at the top of the food chain. But it is because of our ability to adapt on the go and just make things work as soon as we see the utility of it. And yes, a lot of people took Zoom. Okay, well, I can communicate with work via Zoom. That's it. I can, have a board game night via Zoom. But who would have thought that a director would be able to direct a movie and have it done all over Zoom? That to me is the beauty of things. But in terms of the movie itself, in terms of the story itself, I want to say something, because first of all, I have to say that I don't believe that Ethan prepared or had anything edited in a way that could just pull your string, the strings of your heart. I think this is a man who wanted to tell a story of a human being that not only was flawed, because all of us are, but someone who was incredibly conscious of these flaws. Yeah. Someone who was so in tune with his own flaws that while the entire world saw a movie star, he never did. He never did. He always was thinking in the back of his mind, what the hell is it that these people saw? What the hell is it that these people are crazy about? Because I am that little Jewish guy from Shaker Heights. That's it. That's all he saw his entire life. And the reason why I like this is because whenever someone makes a documentary or a series about a star and they present us with those flaws, there is a sense of Schadenfreude that we tend to experience, because they're just like us. The expression they're just like us is actually an expression of Schadenfreude.
Yeah.
But in this case, that's not what you felt. In this case, you felt like this guy lived in his entire life needing a hug.
Yeah. You're right.
I don't know. Like, this guy was in so much pain, and this sense of he was just like me, or he was just like anyone else, didn't come with that sense of Schadenfreude, but rather empathy. And it wasn't like, boo-hoo, I'm a big star. No, it was, man, I feel you. I feel everything you went through. I know you. I know. So what do you say?
I think the interesting thing, one of many things about Paul Newman, is that he understood that he was manufactured, that Paul Newman on the screen was manufactured. He understood that the sex symbol, that the lusted after person was someone that existed merely because through his wife's help and through studio production and things like that was, so he never, I don't think that he ever really confused the two in the sense of like, well, I'm Paul Newman and I'm hot shit, you know what I mean? Like, it was just like that's Paul Newman up there on the screen, and I'm Paul Newman, the boy from, as you said, Shaker Heights. So and I think that the interesting thing about that is that he understood it, and I don't think it really seemed to cause an identity crisis for him. I think it maybe made me feel a little bit like a failure, perhaps, personal life, but I don't think it made him, like regretful, or I don't think he thought that, well, that's what everybody sees, so that's what I need to be, so I'm going to have 47 affairs with every woman I possibly can, because he certainly could have, or do all of the drugs. And he didn't turn into Steve McQueen. That's what Steve McQueen did with his life. I think Steve McQueen kind of got caught up in the aura of the image of Steve McQueen and tried to become what he was on screen. I don't think Paul Newman fell into that trap. And I find that very interesting, that he was so incredibly self-aware of that and of himself, and that he had such respect for his wife, Joanne Woodward, for her true talent, and that he always understood that between the two of them, that she was the much better actor. It was just a point of luck that he got what he got. Like, where there's the series part in the series where they're talking about that luck is an art.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and and he says, my luck started when I was born in 1925 as a white male.
Yeah.
And he
That's
understood
a
this.
very early thing to recognize at the time, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. Like that is incredibly, like, that is so self-aware to go, yeah, that's part of what happened. And then, when there's an interview with him where he's like, I don't want to put on my tombstone that here lies Paul Newman, failure because his eyes turned brown.
Yeah.
Because he understood that, the genetics, the twist of genetics that gave him those gorgeous blue eyes were part of, why he had a career as a sex symbol, was
Yeah.
he had the cool hand Luke stare or whatever. So, he was very, very, very self-aware. And as you said, for someone of that time and era, I mean, heck, now that's a rarity.
Oh yeah. Oh
Honestly.
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of people who claim to be, quote unquote woke or whatever, but they really don't have the level of self-awareness that Paul Newman had in the 90s, and I think probably was slowly coming to through his whole life.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's really necessarily something that just suddenly happens to you overnight. That's something you have to be sort of have a propensity towards, to realize that, I need to not lie to myself about who I am, and understand that who I am is an accident of the cosmos, and not because I'm the most wonderful, magical thing that ever walked on God's green earth.
I'm probably wrong by saying this because I don't know that for a fact, but I would like to think that Joanne Woodward actually created the blueprints for women to be mothers and also functioning movie stars. For women to not be afraid of taking 5, 10 years and say, I'm going to go ahead and be a mother now, and come out and make a comeback and still be relevant and still be up to date and still have it. Again, I don't know if that is a fact, but from what I can see, that is what she did. And I think for me, with the little that I know, that might well be the blueprint, because I can remember Jennifer Garner doing that. I can remember, what's her name, the lady from Goop doing that. I can remember Jennifer Lopez doing that. When she had the twins, she was married to Mark Anthony. She, disappeared from the stratosphere for a moment. Then she came back and she was still Jenny from the block. And I think that I know Joanne Woodward was perhaps the first actress to do that and not come back and be mummified by the press, and which was still it. She still had it. Do you know what I mean? So I think for me that was a moment of revelation about her. But also, you're right. There was this sense of self-updating that she did the entire time. And she instilled that in Paul. She wasn't going to go into the sunset with, my time is done. That's it for me. It was, no, keep evolving, keep evolving. And so it was so beautiful for me when she decided, I'm going back to acting, and I am aware that I'm not going to be offered those roles because I am a woman of a certain age in Hollywood. But I'm going to start doing this thing on my own with my husband. And who else is going to do it? My husband is going to direct it. So here's your opportunity to become Paul Newman, the director. And here's my opportunity of the return of Joanne Woodward to the silver screen. And fuck it, they did it absolutely, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I love, there's some fantastic quotes from Woodward in this that are like, they're just fantastic. There's the one where, in reference to what you were just talking about, where somebody was interviewing her and asking, like, well, isn't it difficult to take direction from your husband, or something along those lines? And she was basically like, who else would I want directing me than somebody who understands me and loves me and wants the best out
Yeah.
of me?
Yes.
It was like, the idea was just baffling to her. Like, why would you even
Yeah.
ask that question? That's stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
which
Absolutely. Yeah.
which to me spoke so much about their relationship, how much trust she had in him, and how much respect she had for him. Because I think that was the other thing too. There was a great deal of mutual respect for them, because even though she was certainly the better artist, if you will, as an actor, she never made him feel like he was something lesser.
Yeah.
And so there's a great deal of mutual respect there. Such an insight into their personality, their dynamic, and how beautiful the human spirit can really be if we allow it. And I think this is something that is brought in the documentary that is really important to the legacy of Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward, is that they realized they used their persona, their public persona, as much as they possibly could during the very tumultuous time in the United States history. And when that didn't work, when the Vietnam War kept going on, when he was on Nixon's hate list, when everything was going down the shitter, they said, okay, we're going to start a charitable foundation, and we can't beat them this way. We can't use our persona. It's not working, but we're going to beat them with money. And so they used their foundation where all of the profits went towards causes that they believed in,
Yeah.
that were the absolute opposite of everything that was going on at the time, all of the bad things that were happening. They channeled all of the money that they possibly could into areas that they could change things.
Yep.
And I think that is something that really speaks also to their caliber of people, of personality, of humanity, and much more so than the philanthropy that we don't see happening today. There's a really great quote from Gore Vidal in here about the two. He talks about, I think it's Gore Vidal that says, actually, I may be mistaken. There's a quote from someone in the documentary who says that he didn't really want to quantify or associate them necessarily with any political party per se, because he felt that he knew, conservatives that were decent people, and he knew people that were liberals that were total shits, I think
Yeah.
was the word that he used,
Yeah.
total shits.
Yeah.
But that what they were was ethic people.
Yes.
They believed in ethics, and they
Yes.
believed in doing what was ethically right. And I thought that was a great way of putting it,
Exactly.
because it doesn't tie them down to anything political, as he said, or any political party. It ties them to human greatness and human ethics and humanity, and being a humanist, as opposed to being just a product of whatever political party or whatever is doing what you feel is right at the time. They were born in the 20s. They could have been everything that Reagan was.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
They could have, but they didn't use the excuse of their generation to
No.
continue to behave a certain way or believe a certain way. It was, no, we're going to take the next step up. We're going to take the next step down. And I think that is a great legacy.
Let's talk about the cars that they're reading. And to explain, the tapes were originally destroyed by Paul himself. That tells you what the man thought of himself. Like, it's like, there's no reason. I'm not important enough for anybody to be listening to any of this bullshit. So fuck off.
Just burn it all.
That's insane, man. That's a beautiful thing. It's like,
it is. It really is. It's
yeah. Like, nah, we're not doing this. Like, so what Ethan decided to do was to cast some actors to just read the transcripts of these tapes, and it massively enhanced the experience of these docuseries. So let's go through it. Right, you had Clooney reading for Paul Newman, which sometimes became a bit confusing, because I know Clooney has a very distinct voice.
Yes.
But there were times where the actual Paul was talking, and I was like, oh, kind of, they do kind of sound the same, innit?
Yeah.
And the idea that, sometimes Clooney sort of like merged with the real voice of Paul Newman, kind of like, wow, that's good.
Yeah. I noticed that too, because there were times too where I was like, wait, is that? No, that's not. Wait, maybe it is. Wait.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Another very interesting reader to me also was how much he captured everything about Gore Vidal was Brooks Ashman's cast, because Vidal always sounded like he was talking to you from a pedestal.
Such a brilliant. That's brilliant. Yes.
He was posh, but condescendingly posh too, to a certain extent. And it's not something he tried. It was just, that's the way I speak. Fuck you. And Brooks Ashman-Cast did that absolutely perfect. Like you could close your eyes and think that's the man. That's the man. I was brilliant. That was brilliant.
Yes. I really, now, as you said, we don't really know what Jackie sounded like, but I thought Zoe Kazan put in a fabulous performance because for me, a few of the actors, you could sort of tell they were real.
Yeah.
But for me, with Zoe Kazan, however you say, she gave a performance. That
Yes.
was a voice performance, and
Yes.
it
Yes.
was you could hear the inflections and the
Yes.
disgust and the also the part where it's like I have a very funny story to tell you, but you have to turn off the tape. That sounded
Yes.
exactly like I have a
Yes.
very funny story in my head, and you need to turn off, and I'll tell you.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it was just she was so good.
Karen Allen also did a marvelous job reading as the stepmother of Joanne Woodward,
She did.
especially with the southern accent, because it wasn't terribly exaggerated.
No,
And
no.
it sounded because most people think that all southern accents are the same, and it sounded a Georgia southern accent,
The kind of posh
a
Georgia
Georgia
accent.
twang.
Yeah,
Yes.
just
Yes.
a little bit posh because
Yes.
there's
Yeah. Like I grew up on a big house in a farm, and we read, and
yeah.
we had tutoring and all kind of shit. That was fantastic.
And
Yeah.
I love Karen Allen anyway, and so like I'm happy anytime she's working.
Yeah. So
So, but
who else called
let's
your
see.
attention?
I thought that Billy Crudup did well. I'm trying to remember which voice he did. He did Redford, I believe, right? Didn't he do Redford?
Billy.
Crudup. But he was good. It was nice to see the interview from Sally Field talking about how Joanne
Yeah.
Woodward essentially made her career for her.
Yeah.
With the movie Sybil, that it was, either
Yeah.
it's either her or you don't have me. And I thought
Yeah.
that was fantastic.
That's amazing. And it was
Yeah.
like, I'm vouching for you. I don't even know who the fuck you are.
Yeah.
It's just like I
Yeah.
just like what you just did here right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
So there is it. Yeah. Let me see. What do you think of Laura Linney reading for Joanne?
I thought that was good. I thought she did a great job with it. I knew when it was her and not Joanne Woodward
Yeah.
because Joanne Woodward had a very distinctive voice.
Yeah.
Paul Newman does too, but Joanne Woodward, it's completely to
Yeah.
me. But at the same time, I felt that it was a performance. It wasn't just a reading. Laura Linney was essentially, I guess, discovered and coached by Joanne Woodward. So I think it was
Yeah.
nice to have that connection there, that personal connection.
Yeah, I think also Jonathan Mark Sherman as Martin Ritt and Tom McCarthy reading for Sidney Lumet. They were brilliant. They actually performed too. I think it was a very, very fantastic cast. And
Yes.
I'm glad that they did the tape. Right. So this has been a discovery for me, and I am glad that we decided to do this. We heavily recommend it.
Yes.
Because this is not just about Hollywood stars. It's about two human beings that you will empathize with. And even though they're sort of like long gone, you'll be glad that you exist on the same earth as they did, and it's sort of like an honor, to be honest.
Yeah.
All right. So the docuseries is called The Last Movie Stars, directed by Ethan Hawke. HBO Max is where you can find it. And before we go, of course, we're gonna let you know that you can find us on social media, everywhere on social media, but you will mainly find Jojo on Instagram as
KNS co-host.
That's where you'll find her, on Instagram as KNS co-host. You will find me on the internet, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. I am Mr. Puzzetta. That's MrPuzzetta.
Yes.
We are going to call it a day for me, for Jojo. Bye, everyone.
Bye.